Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you to be here, and thank you so much, Neil, to be with us and to explain your Responsive Agile Coaching, which is a book that I suggest to read. I did, and we translate also one chapter of the book and put on our website in Agile School, so you can read a part of the book as normally the publisher permit to publish. So now Neil will explain us his methodology or his approach about coaching. I would like just to know about you, Neil. You have a great experience because you are an agile coach from a long time, I think, in Australia, which is one of the countries that really start before other countries to implement agile in not only IT company, but also in the other companies. So the process of becoming agile of the huge company is really going very fast in Australia. So in fact, it's full of people that do this work. So I like to really underline the difference between have a methodology like Scrum, be a Scrum Master, and doing something like Agile coaching. Neil, I leave you. If you want to share the screen.
Yeah, I'll share the screen in a sec, but let's answer that. Let's answer that question just so we're all, if that's something that we need to get out of the way. So for me, if you look at an agile team, in there you'll have the team members plus a Scrum Master. A Scrum Master is a member of an agile team. They're in the team and they're helping from within. For me, this is my opinion, and others will argue me. For me, an agile coach sits outside of the Scrum team and observes the system from a different perspective. And that's usually why an agile coach will work across a number of teams. And they've got this different view. It's because they're out of the system. All right. It's a bit hard to identify leverage points if you're inside the system. It's not impossible, but it's an important difference. And of course, a Scrum Master has one objective: to implement Scrum. A coach has many objectives, including broader issues out of the team. They're not married to a framework. So a Scrum Master is a role invented as part of a framework. An Agile coach is looking at the body of knowledge around Agile, irrespective of framework. In fact, they should be agnostic of framework. Is that helpful, Fabio?
Great. In fact, I only add something that is the Scrum Master normally has a focus on the team only, and his work is just to implement the Scrum normally. And he's not responsible, but he work on the team performance. In Agile coach, Agile coaching is something of an increasing the performance of the whole company to really see how can get better. Okay, thank you.
You're most welcome. So I'm going to jump into a bit of content that talks about the book I wrote, which Fabio introduced, Responsive Agile Coaching. And the reason I wrote a book is what I'd like to talk about first, because I'm not sure if anyone here has considered writing a book. It's pretty hard. You have to think about, well, has someone else already put the ideas out there? Am I just saying the same thing? So in other words, what's my contribution to the body of knowledge? What's extra? What's additive? What am I doing that's valuable? So I want to talk to you about why I wrote a book. And I remember I was on LinkedIn one day and the arguments were going around and around about what an agile coach does, how they should be accountable, and it was just a circular argument. And I said to everybody, I don't think how we're describing agile coaching is correct. And I say that from a practitioner's perspective, from a person who's been doing it and done it. a lot. So we have a model, which I'll talk to tonight, which is the current model. And I'll take you through that. And then I will present my model, how that is building on what we know today. It's an extra, it's an add, it's not an or. I'm going to give you a bit of a background on the theory behind that. And then I want to really talk to you about how to have deeper conversations of change, how we maintain our ability to respond under pressure as Agile coaches, and then we'll have some questions. Now, you're all probably wondering, what's Niall? Whoops, did he put the wrong slide in the slide pack? No, I didn't. How beautiful is this animal in executing what it does and who it is? How could we describe a cheetah in full flight doing what it does? There's an art, there's some beauty to it, right? And I'm going to take you on a little bit of I'm being a bit facetious and a bit cheeky here, but just bear with me. Think of this cheetah running. Now, what if we were to build a set of competencies to explain what cheetahing is, what a cheetah does? How would we explain the things that cheetahs do that produces this performance of an animal in action? Well, you could say that this competency of being able to run fast is part of being a cheetah. And I know mother cheetahs help their little cubs become cheetahs as well. And the cheetahs are very good at stalking and killing. That's some of their competencies. And there's different types of cheetahs that will live in different places. Now, I'm making a bit of a joke here about how it's pretty difficult to explain something of such beauty and performance by chopping it up into its parts. Now, Agile coaching at the moment is described by a collection of competencies. In effect, the wonderful work we do, influencing behavior, taking people on a journey of change, the art and the craft of coaching at the moment is described in a diagram similar to this as a set of static competencies. All right, and I'm going to talk and elaborate on that in a minute. But before we do that, I want to sort of just show this video and just get you to reflect on what you see in the different styles of these coaches as they're working with their clients. So the point I'm trying to make is, as coaches, we all show up a certain way. As coaches, we all have our natural style. And we're human beings. Like the cheetah, we show up in a certain way, and it's a thing of beauty as a human being doing what we do. And I think competencies at the moment in terms of Agile coaching are described, as I said, by this diagram. And I don't have an argument with the diagram, by the way. I don't have an argument with it. It's entirely useful and appropriate, but it does not describe what we do. It does not describe how, in this illustration here, one person in the moment does and says certain things. They might draw from these competencies, but it does not explain the art of coaching, how we do it, how it's executed. Because when I first came to Agile coaching, there was 3 questions that were left unanswered from that model. What do I do? When do I do it? And how do I coordinate all of those different competencies? So when a client is in front of me, what, when, and how do I execute? And I wrote a book That was why I wrote a book, because that question for me was not answered. I needed a model to say, when do I mentor? When do I train? When do I facilitate? Do I do a professional coaching conversation now? What's the trigger to tell me to do that? That's right. So it's difficult. So I came up with the Responsive Agile Coaching model, wrote a book about it, and have done a lot of coaching of coaches, hundreds of coaches. I mentor and I coach and I help educate. So I want to take you through this model. And as I said before, this is not disrespecting the work that's been beforehand. It is helping us make sense of that competency model so that we can start to think about, when is the best time to be a mentor? When is the best time to be a teacher? When is the best time to stop and do a coaching conversation? That's what the model does. That's the problem it solves. So I'm going to step you through this model. It's the one in the book. And if you've got any questions, throw them into the chat as we go. I'm going to actually get the chat open so I can see your questions when they come. That's what I'm going to do. I hope everybody can hear me. Someone says they can't hear the video audio because there wasn't any. That's okay. So the Responsive Agile Coaching model. Let me take you through it. Now, as coaches, and this was a really nice opening question, Fabio, when you talked, you asked me about the coach versus the scrum master. So an agile coach should be sensing their environment, ready to respond, ready to serve. So I've called that, I'm going to call these moves we need to make, because they are active. They are things you do. Okay. So it's a flow-based approach. So sense, then respond is the first move in the model. So we're sensing, looking to see when we can help. And really then I think we come to a point of decision. So I'll give you an example, everybody. So you're at a retrospective and you notice one of the participants in the team is talking over the top of somebody, right? And they're not providing that person the choice. Now, as a coach, you can either do something about that or not. So this point of decision, we can do one of a few things. We can do another move. We can tell or show the team what's the right thing to do. We can step in and say something and say, oh, excuse me, Fred, what's appropriate here at retrospective is to provide enough room for everybody to speak. So we're getting right in and we're being very directive, very instructional. Okay, so that's one move. You sense there's a problem and you're going to stand up and do something about it. Tell or show someone the answer. And this other move is where I think a lot of coaches get very, very confused. When is it appropriate for me to stop, open the space, and have a deeper conversation around the change that we're trying to create in the team? You can't always tell people the answer. You can't always directly show people what to do. Sometimes you need to stop, slow everything down, and facilitate a deeper conversation, either one-on-one or with the team. And when I'm coaching coaches, I often find that a lot of coaches haven't developed this ability to have deeper conversations, or they've overdeveloped it and they're doing too many deep conversations and they're not being direct enough. They're not telling and showing enough. So it's the balance of these two things is really the secret at that point of decision, if that makes sense. So after we've opened the space for a deeper conversation, it's really important to co-create with the people or the person you're coaching. Now, if you think about training and teaching, which is telling and showing, versus helping and facilitating something to happen, this pathway that goes down like at the bottom of that U is a different choice. It's a different stance, if you like, to co-create. So irrespective of whether you're being very direct or whether you're opening up the space for a deeper conversation, the end point for us as coaches is to embed change. And I love the way the cartoonist here has illustrated the coach, and that goes, Fabio, back to the fact that the coach is not in the team. They're standing and observing, their work is done, they've embedded some change. So that's the responsive agile coaching model. There's 4 moves: sensing and responding to your environment, making a decision, an on-purpose response to the situation about, well, do I need to be direct and tell and show my team or the person what needs to be done to improve their agility? Or do I stop because maybe I'm meeting some resistance to what I'm saying? Or maybe I'm sensing there's some tension in the conversation and I have to open up that space and hold it for people to work through that challenge. Wait for the right moment, just wait for that moment to then co-create and move the conversation forward and embed that change. So that's the responsive agile coaching model. And as I said, it does not replace the competency view of coaching, but it gives you a map, a navigation, a way to navigate a conversation that I don't think we've had to date. So we know where we are, and therefore, once you know where you are, you can navigate towards the outcome, which is embedding change. So you're probably thinking, that's great, Niall. Did you just make this up? The answer is no. This model, and I'm going to give you some references here of where I got my learnings from, the shoulders I'm standing on in my coaching practice. And these 4 books were really foundational for me in terms of helping me understand that sometimes change requires the coach to have this deep level of self-awareness, presence, and to understand how mindfulness allows you to make those choices about what's the right thing to do in the moment, whether it's being direct or whether it's opening up that space for a deeper conversation. So I encourage you, if you are interested, to look at this body of work by these people, because for me, it was foundational in reframing coaching for myself. And I just want to pause on Theory U just for a moment, because my model is directly based on Theory U. If you think about that downward pathway where we're co-creating change, that red dot symbolizes that wonderful magic moment as a coach when the atmosphere of the team or the person you're talking with, you get that shift. You get that aha moment that we all love and we all crave, that moment where the light bulb goes on and the person you're coaching goes, yes, I get it. And that's the power of Theory U, that you work through that process to co-create change, and create a new way of working, and that's our job. So Theory U is a really great body of knowledge. Highly encourage you to have a look at it. What I want to do now is do a bit of a deep dive on the bottom part of the model that I've shown you, because I think opening and holding the space, awaiting and then co-creating the U part is something that Agile coaching has struggled with. And at the moment, there's a lot of, I wouldn't say they're warring factions in the coaching community, but there's some people that really feel the coach's job is to go in, teach, instruct, and give people playbooks. Especially in Australasia, there's a big push to write the playbook of Agile and install it into the organization. Think of the Scaled Agile framework, think of big consulting firms coming in and doing the PowerPoint packs. There's lots of pushback. Now, that is very much telling and showing people what Agile is, which sometimes is appropriate, sometimes, but I would argue, very strongly I would argue, that there will always be a requirement for us to open and hold the space and co-create the way of working, not just tell people what the way of working is, because that's what coaching is. And that's what the model helps us consider a bit more. So how do we do that? How do we have conversations that are different to just telling or showing people what to do? Now, I want to just pause there just for a moment and talk about professional coaching. So professional coaching is in the language of Agile coaches due to the Agile Coaching Institute's competency model that I just showed you before. Now, professional coaching is a collection of skills that allow you to have these deeper conversations with individuals. Now, Agile, when we're trying to adopt new ways to work, Agile coaches, we have an agenda. We have an agenda. We are there to enable the adoption of a new way to work. That is why we exist. We are not there to conduct life coaching for our clients. Now, we might talk a little bit about who they are, how they feel, why they come to work, and I'll touch on that in a minute, but we have professional coaching is 100% driven by what the client wants to talk about. Agile coaching has an agenda to implement or adopt a new way to work in the organization. So as an Agile coach, you are serving the organization as well as serving the people you coach. But you will always have an agenda. And that is actually the difference between professional coaching and Agile coaching. We have an agenda because we're trying to implement a new way to work. Now, that is important, okay? Because when I go through this slide here on the 4 types of conversations, you're coming to a conversation with an opinion because that's what you're paid to have. You're paid to have an opinion about the way of working. You are a subject matter expert in ways to work, okay? So I just wanted to frame that up a little bit. So this is going through different types of conversation levels, and I would, I suppose it's for us as coaches to have a think about the, say you have 100 conversations during the course of a day. How many are at each of these levels? Okay, so I'll go through them now and just have a think. What types of conversations did I have today? So the first type of conversation you can have is what I call downloading. So think of downloading a new app onto your phone, all right? The phone doesn't really have much say in it. The app just goes in, right? It's a one-way thing. And look, it's not negative. Sometimes a client will come to you and the system is in chaos, right? If the system is in chaos and you have the best first step for the team to take to improve their way of working, that's fine. You can download the answer. I'll go, hey, can we have some help? Can you please tell us what's the best thing to do? Because our backlog is a mess. You don't need to have a deep conversation about that. You might say, well, let's prioritize our work. And you just download the way to do that. You just tell them, right? Nothing too complicated, okay? So downloading. How many of those conversations did you have today where you just told someone an answer? Have a think about that. Maybe in the chat, put the percentage you think you had of downloading conversations today. The next one is debate. Now, we all get into debates. In fact, if you're not getting in debates, you're not challenging the system. So if everybody's agreeing with everybody all the time, where's the change? Where's the creative disagreement? So debate is okay, but we don't want to be stuck in debate. So if you're a coach, and I often say to junior beginner coaches who feel like they're the agile police and they run around hitting everybody over the head with agile. Agile, you're not agile, you're not agile, you're not agile. and they just end up in debates all day because they're arguing, over Agile, which we should never, right? Never argue over Agile. You should be talking about the work. So have a think. How many debates did you have today over whether the stand-up should be 10 minutes or 5 minutes, or is the retro in the right format or something? Yeah, so have a think about how many debates you've had today. Now, this is where we want to be. This should be our home base as coaches. And the cartoonist, these are illustrations from the book, by the way. The cartoonist that drew this was very, very clever. Can you see the way he's got the arrows going into that lovely entwined illustration, which shows that each of the parties have brought an idea and they're mingling, they're thinking. And as coaches, when we're co-creating a way forward, doing it with and through other people, we need to be having a dialogue. That should be our primary types of conversations we're having. So have a think about the conversations you had today. What percentage would you honestly assess were true exchanges of ideas? And maybe the best way for you to just sort of think about that is, when you were in your conversations today, did you hold your opinion very gently? Like there's a little moth inside your hands. Or were you going in saying, I've got the answer? So have a think about that. And if you are holding your opinion lightly and willing to listen and entertain someone else's, you're probably in a dialogue. Now, those lovely moments when the team comes up with something amazing, quite often when we're working with requirements, or doing story mapping, or we're slicing value, or we're talking with the technology team about our solution to a wicked problem, and they come up with some idea, they're brilliant moments. So how many conversations did you facilitate where the collective wisdom came up with these amazing, insightful, innovative, creative? Yeah, so as coaches, what I'm putting to you is, know how you're talking and conversing. Have awareness of that, and make sure you don't get stuck in debate, and make sure you're not downloading too much when you should be in dialogue. That's the takeaway from this anyway. Hopefully that's helpful. Now, you're probably wondering what this diagram means. When I was writing the book, I tried to think of the best way to explain communication. And when I did my professional coach training, it was explained to me like this. When we're talking as coaches, we put our messages, we encode our messages into our language, and we put it into the space between people. And then the other party takes what we've just said, decodes it, and gains some understanding. And this encoding and decoding of messages requires a shared space that we communicate in. As Agile coaches, we have the job to create and hold that space so people can talk and converse, work out their problems, be creative, and move forward together with a shared understanding, right? So this picture is a metaphor that I use in the book to explain how we need to respect the space. And it simply has two people with sticks in a sand pit, where one person would explain a concept using a picture drawn in the sand with their stick. And the other person would then try and understand that. And then when they've done their bit, they would clean the sand and they would respond with their own picture. And it's to basically say, we need to make sure that what we put in the space is understood, and we give the other person the opportunity to illustrate or put their thing into the sand pit. So it's really for me, it was very helpful after I did my coach training to understand that that space is not, you can't see it, but it's real. And our job is to create that space. If everybody's talking over the top of each other, our job's to hold the space, make sure that everybody's respected and their view can be heard. It's part of psychological safety as well. So that's just a picture that I'm hoping will imprint in your mind so you understand the concept of space, because one of the moves, open and hold the space, is very, it's critical, central to the book. Hopefully that was a little bit helpful. Now, I wanted to just spend a little bit of time talking about when we do open the space for these deeper conversations. And I'm not sure if any of you have coached in situations with high levels of conflict or destructive teams or toxic cultures. When you're opening up and holding the space for deeper conversations, this is really a good tool to use when you've got a team that's at war and they're not getting along. So, you know, when you are holding the space for a deeper conversation, there's sort of 3 levels I want to quickly touch on. So when you're conducting conversations and having dialogues, there's sort of 3 levels you can think about, all right? One is, say you've got 2 parties and they're not agreeing, and you're facilitating and opening and holding the space. You can simply allow everybody to use the logic of their mind and see what's going on. What are the facts? So that's one level of opening up the space and saying, let's look at the facts together. Using that sandpit metaphor, let's look at the numbers and the metrics. A lot of coaches use metrics and data. Not a problem, wonderful. But let me challenge that a little bit. Sometimes it's not enough. People don't make decisions because of metrics and facts. They make it because of, why do you think people make decisions and behave certain ways? And put it in the chat. Why do you think people behave the way they do? What drives their behavior if it's not facts? It's an interesting one, and I did a lot of research on this because we're emotional. We're emotional beings. We make decisions because of emotions. Habits. That's right. Our habits are driven by avoiding discomfort and trying to be comfortable. A lot of it is emotions and feelings, exactly. So I think coaches, especially agile coaches, and maybe in Italy, you folk are more into the passion of life, right? But let me tell you, you know, my wife's French Spanish, and you know, the emotion, you know, it's there, and I'm like, oh wow. In Australia, we don't do emotions at work. We don't do it, right? And it's really unhealthy. It's really unhealthy because everyone's trying to work things out with their head, but no one's asking people how they're going as human beings. So when we're coaching, agile coaching, and we're saying, hey, we need to change the way we work, and somebody's getting emotional, as coaches, we need to hold the space and help people feel like they've been understood and they're recognized, and not just try and turn the conversation back to numbers, but say, hey, yeah, no, I'm noticing that that's fine, no worries. I'm seeing you getting, that's fine. I appreciate the fact that this is quite difficult for you. Not a problem, not a problem. Let's take a step back, right? So in Australia, we are so bad at this that we have a national day that we call Are You Okay? It's an Are You Okay Day. And I write about it in my book because we've got a charity that helps Australian people in the workplace ask their colleagues, are you okay? So as agile coaches, we need to ask our people, are you okay? So that's opening your heart. That's opening your heart and coaching from the heart, okay? Now, the last one is an interesting one. When we're coaching, when we are coaching and you get people who are really, really resistant to the change, quite often it is because they don't know what their purpose is anymore in the new operating model. So they'll be going, I don't know what my role is. And they don't feel alignment to the change in the way of working. They feel disconnected from what the organization is doing. So as an agile coach, the point I'm trying to make here, if you're opening up the space for a deeper conversation around change, you need to, I believe, develop the capability to look someone in the eye and go, Fabio, I see you're struggling. Are you okay? And furthermore, do you know what your role is here? You know, so you connect to their reason for coming to work. You connect to their sense of mastery and purpose. So these are different types of conversations. That's all I'm trying to show you. And coaching is not just about the logic and the head. It's got the heart and it's got the purpose. And I think we need to develop the ability to have conversations in those three dimensions. That's really the point I'm making in the book. And that wonderful moment that I've talked about where we get that sense of presence in the room is the magic that really helps us turn and move towards co-creating the way forward through the open heart, open will, and open mind. So you can read more about it, but I'm hoping you get an idea or a bit of an understanding. So I'm just checking time. This is the overall model, which I won't actually stop on because there's a lot of information there. But essentially, just recapping, we're sensing and responding the environment. We have a moment where we choose, do I tell the person the answer to the question they're asking me, or am I in a situation where I need to open the space? Open the space for a communication, open my mind, open my heart, open my will, and then co-create the way forward before I embed that change. So can you see how this is a way for you to know the type of conversation you may be having at any particular point as you're trying to move people through a journey of change? Now, what I wanted to do, just to sort of map it back to the original competencies, is to sort of say to you, oops, what I might do here actually, is go back to that slide there and just say, look, these things still map to the model. So if I'm opening up the space for a deeper conversation, I'll be using some professional coaching skills. If I'm taking a whole bunch of people through that process, if I'm taking more than one person through that process, I'm facilitating a whole bunch of people for a deeper conversation. If I'm telling or showing somebody, I'm training and I'm mentoring. So it's not different. All I'm trying to do is help us navigate. When do I train and mentor versus facilitate and coach? The answer is you need to make an on-purpose decision around what's the right move to make for a specific conversation and context that's happening. Hopefully that's helpful. So yeah, we're just about at 15 minutes. Did you want to stop there, folks, and we have some conversations, Fabio, some Q&A?
Sure. We don't have any question, but if someone want to have some question, you just can open your microphone and ask Neil.
Otherwise, I do have a little bit more content I can take you folks through on some of the neuroscience and habits, which someone mentioned. I've got a little bit of content on that. So it's up to you. Happy to go where you want.
Or maybe you can tell us some experience that you had as an agile coach that you find difficult, and how did you face them?
Yeah, I'll give you a story. So I was recently given the job of taking 76 very, very senior project managers on a journey towards being more flow-based facilitators of value, right? So moving from traditional roles to Scrum Masters, senior Scrum Masters, portfolio facilitators. And it would be fair to say that I'd never had a more hostile audience for a training event. And I was working with a very good colleague of mine at the time, and she, you know, when you're working with people and they're really great bouncing ideas off, and you know, she said to me, she goes, Niall, don't, in the first half a day, I think we use the first half a day to just open the space and hold it. Don't try and say anything to them. Don't try and teach them anything. Just make the space available for them. And I thought, oh, okay. My intuition said that was the right answer. So we spent the first half day recognizing, amplifying, and basically making sure everybody was validated for how awesome they were as delivery professionals. And then I said, all those things you're really good at, we want to keep. We just want to just change a couple of little things. And look, that for me was the biggest lesson on, don't just tell people stuff, you know, think about opening the space and let them empty everything they've got out, make sure they feel heard, then co-create the way forward for what their role is going to be. So that was like a big mass experiment, Fabio, on that model, right? We've got a great question here. How the coach can help the organization where the business use waterfall approach instead of the operation part Scrum team, use Mindset Agile. Yeah, okay. Now, it's an interest. It's the exact correct question. So quite often, and this is, I'm being really open with you all, my journey as a coach, I started off and I think like we all do, when we learn something we think is the answer, we get really excited and we think, yes, Agile is going to fix everything. And we get a little bit evangelical, a little bit too dogmatic that Agile is the answer for everything. And I think what happens is, if we go into an organization and we fail to recognize the current approach, waterfall, whatever, I think what happens almost instantly is there's us, the new people with Agile, and there's them, the people that don't get it. So when I go into an organization and I've just started a new client, it's got 5,000 employees, and I started 3 weeks ago. And I made the decision, because of what you've just said there, I made the decision to not challenge the traditional way of working, but to try and find what is good about it, and then evolve and iterate. So at some point, you will bump up against the old approach, but you need to then have your data. Usually it's like this. Usually I call it water, scrum, fall. So it's like water, then we do a bit of scrum, and then we batch it all up and we fall into production, right? Water, scrum, fall. So what we need to do, if someone's trying to do scrum inside that, is we need to have the value stream map, the cycle time data, right? To say, well, doing requirements, that takes us 1 month. We do then 3 sprints, that's 6 weeks. And then we have to batch it all up, and that takes another month, right? Now, I think coaches like us need to come in and we need to get this data really, really, really quickly. So right now, that's what I'm doing. I just did a value stream map of how to do a small change in the IT production system, right? 374 days to change a line of code because of all of this, right? And they're doing safe, sort of. So I do think we need to then take that up for decision. Now, if you're not sponsored to change the structural setup of the company, then you're optimizing locally. And that is the most frustrating situation for us, right? Where we're in this agile bubble and there's all these barriers to change around us. So I suppose, Pizarro, my answer would be, we need to map the system, show the data that says it's not delivering value in a very fast and effective way. We need to recognize what's going on and say, that's fine. It's not bad. It's not us and them. How do you want to go forward? Do you want to go forward? Is there an appetite for going forward? Do you want to sponsor me? So there is a lot of data collection. You can't just go in and say we're installing safe and you all don't understand.
Yeah, yes. Normally also in Italy, you just do a pilot experimentation with the team, and so it's not risky and not so costly for the company, but they see the result. Only a result can convince the company to say, okay, let's do another team. We can just think about our structure. We just can go on. But without that, you don't have any evidence.
I agree. And look, it's very different. If you have a 50-person organization versus a 5,000-person organization, the answer to your question is completely different.
Yeah.
I was in at a 50-person organization the other day. I could wrap my arms around everybody, right? So if they're doing waterfall plus this, you can sort of say, come on, there's only 50 people. We can rearrange ourselves here. Come on. There's another question here. I have a question about the embed part of your model. How do you reconnect embedding awareness with the whole system and the other teams? Yeah, it's a good comment. I'm not sure about when you roll out their coaching, when someone does something that's amazing, like a little thing. If a team embeds a new way of working, I actually wouldn't say much around the way of working. And because we've embedded change, something awesome would have happened. We would have achieved an outcome for the business. So I'm very careful about announcing something about Agile. So I wouldn't announce that we've embedded anything different. What I would announce is, instead of it taking us a month to deliver out of the Scrum team, it's taken us a day because we've implemented DevOps. I would talk about the impact and the key result that it has for the business. And I suppose it leads to another point. Even though I love Agile coaching and Agile, all the language and all of the things I've just said in my book, I would never talk to the business about that like that. I always talk about what they want: outcomes, business change, customer satisfaction, making more profit. So if I was to embed a new way of working, it would be because we've got a good result for the business, and I would talk about that. But in my Agile coaching community, I would talk about the Agile stuff. I'd say, yeah, we got that DevOps pipeline through for that one team, and now we can get stuff done in a day for this functionality because the security operations team is now embedded in the Scrum team, or whatever it is, right? Good question, though. But I like your language there, though. Awareness of the whole. I actually, when I'm coaching coaches, say, how can you make the system see itself? Yeah. And I remember once I was coaching a very big program of work, and I used a color system to sort of say where I thought the teams were at. And it goes back to Toyota when they did those chalk circles, for someone to stand on the production floor, and then they had how many things have gone through the Kanban on a day, and each of the teams could see the throughput of each of the other teams. So there's something about helping the system see itself that I love the way you've put that there within the whole system. So yeah, that's very, very well put.
Is probably the biggest problem I used to meet. People do the work, but they don't know how they do their work, and they don't measure. the result and the time they make to do their work. So it's very important to be aware of how the system works.
I totally agree. And I think you need to collect a few points of data. One is the cycle time. Absolutely. And a model I'm looking at the moment, which you might be interested in, it's not my model, it's someone else's. It's better value, sooner, safer, happier. You can look it up now, BVSSH. It's by Jonathan Smart. And I'm using that data model as a way to talk about how we're delivering value to the business from the Agile coaching service. So I really do encourage you. So if my book is about how the practitioner delivers the coaching service, that book is what we're supposed to do, what the value we deliver for the business customers we serve, a model to describe the outcomes of our work.
Can you write on
the chat?
On the chat so everybody can.
Yeah. So it's better value, sooner, safer, happier. If you search that up, he's got a whole website. I went on his course last month. It was very, very useful. So I will fast forward to the end of my slide pack, and then you can find some ways to connect with me. That's so just so everybody knows, everybody's personally invited to connect with me on LinkedIn, so go crazy. The other thing I do have for you is I do run a community of about 300-400 Agile coaches around some of the concepts in the book, but also other things. It's called Responsive Agile Coach, and that's a free and open community that I'm running. You're welcome to go in there and participate. All my blog posts, all my videos, everything gets put in there, and we have conversations, all my meetups and all the topics. So you're welcome to join there and have a look. My website has a blog. I blog every 2 weeks religiously. I try to. And the book has its own website there as well. I know you've got the Italian version of the download, so well done, Fabio, but there's videos on each of the moves in the model, and you can go there and get further information and download some of the pictures too, if you want to.
Thank you
that's
very
my
much.
website up there. No worries at all. Hopefully everybody, I don't know, hopefully you got value, everybody.
Absolutely, I think so. Thank you so much, Neil.